Welcome to another Thunder Thursday, and this is a big Thunder Thursday. We're counting down the days until July 1st. Free agency season opens in the NBA, and Paul George's destination will soon be known. I'm Barry Trammell, along with Thunder writers Eric Horn and Brett Dawson. And guys, we're going to know soon. A lot of the tea leaves being read. There seems to be growing optimism that Paul George is going to remain with the Thunder. Don't count me on that group.
Don't count me either.
Don't count you?
Nope.
So we are negative Nancy's in unison.
We've seen this movie, Barry.
We have seen this movie. This is part two. But let's engage the folks. Where is this growing sense of optimism coming from, do you think, that Paul George is actually going to stay with the Thunder?
Well, I think it's come from, the season. Some of the things that Paul George's, camp has put out to the Thunder and other people, they've always said that they're going to be transparent. They were transparent with Indiana when Paul wanted to get traded or said that he wasn't coming back for the final year. If he was going to be a free agent, whenever he became a free agent, he wasn't going to come back. So I think that the Thunder feels good about where they are with Paul in terms of the year. I think Paul felt good about the year, even though it was a disappointment in terms of them in the standings and where they got to. The relationship with Russell Westbrook was solid. The chemistry between he and Carmelo Anthony, even though it didn't look that great on the court at times, was good off the court. So I think that's where the optimism comes from. And then, with some of the recent reports that have happened with the Kawhi Leonard situation in the trade, and the potential trade of San Antonio, trading Kawhi Leonard to the Lakers, I think that gives you a little bit more optimism too, because that would presumably be cap space that would be taken up by Kawhi Leonard if LeBron James were to go to LA too. Big convoluted mess, but I think there's optimism in Thunderland. Just don't count me in that optimism.
You either, Brett.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this stuff's happening. There's been a lot of reporting. I think one of the most significant things, Sam Amick from USA Today reported, LeBron James's camp wasn't confident that Paul George was going to leave. That would lend a little bit of optimism. And as Eric said, there is reporting going around that LeBron James wants some assurances there's going to be another star there, and the Lakers appear to be working really hard to get Kawhi Leonard. That indicates there's not a lot of confidence that Paul George is going to sign outright there if they need to go make a trade to get another star to entice LeBron. So all that stuff is there, and all that stuff is reason for optimism. And I'm not going to sit here and say Paul George isn't coming back to Oklahoma City. I think there's a fine chance of that. I think maybe a 50-50 shot, somewhere around in that range. But I think the main thing, and everybody around here should know this, none of this matters until Paul George meets with the Lakers and tells them no.
Look, and I'll just add this, just for the conspiracy theorists out there, all this stuff could already be in the bag. We've had players go on Twitter and say that all these things go down before it even gets close to July 1st. And there's nothing against players talking to players in the offseason. While, there have been a lot of tampering issues with the Lakers, they've been hit for tampering twice in the last year when it came to Giannis Antetokounmpo. I just wanted to say Antetokounmpo. And Paul George himself. Look, players can do it. Teams can't talk to players until July 1st. There's no reason to think that LeBron James, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, any of these guys that want to be in LA haven't talked to each other throughout this process. So Paul George, for all we know, might already be in the bag. He might already be he might have already made up his mind in terms of where he wants to be. He might want to already be in LA. It seems like everything's pointing to LeBron wanting to be in LA. And this might be pressure from some other outside camps, whether it's LeBron's, Paul George's, anybody else's, putting pressure on the Lakers and the Spurs to get a deal done so they can get a trade done for Kawhi, and then they can make their own super team. So, I'll just feed into the conspiracy theorists for this one time right now. Basically, everybody's conspiring against the Thunder in Oklahoma City. Everybody hates small markets. Everybody wants all the stars in LA, and there you have it.
Well, let me ask you this. You both you guys talking about Kawhi. It does seem likely that the Lakers' apparent, and I think we all would agree it is real interest in trading for Kawhi Leonard, does mean that there's no Paul George, LeBron James deal in the bag. If that deal was in the bag, and those two guys could get together and put it in the bag, if it's not in the bag, then that's why the Lakers want to go after Kawhi. That is a reason for optimism.
Absolutely, because look, one of the things that was reported in that the whole process ESPN did of reporting that Kawhi Leonard trade possibility is that the Lakers were willing to take on 2018-19 salary in order to get a first-round pick that they could use to sweeten a deal. if they're willing to take on additional salary in addition to going out and trading for Kawhi Leonard, that's going to take them out of the range of signing 2 high-level free agents. So if they're willing to do that, and that's what the reporting says, we can't say for 100% certain that's what the Lakers are willing to do, but given the reporters involved, you would expect that's true. If that's the case, then they are willing to punt on getting 2 superstars via free agency in order to get one via trade, and that sure would indicate that not both of these guys have locked it in with the Lakers. Now, that doesn't mean, for all we know, it's Paul George and Kawhi Leonard they're trying to get and not LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard, but that doesn't seem to be the way things are going.
Do you guys think that all 3 of these guys, let's not Leonard because he's it's sort of out of his control, Paul George, LeBron James, do you think they know where they want to go right now?
Yes.
Or do you think July 1st is when they start investigating?
Yes. I think that they know. That's not to say that they can't change their mind. I think, just off of what we've read about the Kevin Durant situation, he probably wanted to leave Oklahoma City before he made his decision. But I think when it came time to make his decision, he had some legitimate, emotional conflicts. Then he woke up that morning and, he had the push he needed, whether it was from external influences or himself, to say, I'm going to make this move to Golden State. I still think that these guys can still, kind of waffle on their decision or still have some deliberation period in between now and then. But if the Lakers have been in Paul's heart since last year, I think the Lakers are probably still in his heart. Clearly the Thunder's made it more difficult for him to make a decision. And, props to the Thunder for doing that. Props to Russell Westbrook for, becoming more of a guy that's more open to, talking about those things and working with a guy in terms of making him stay. Props to, Sam Presti and the Thunder community for, doing the best they could to keep Paul George. I just think it's really hard for if somebody has their heart set on making a decision for a year and change that you're going to be able to sway them when it comes down to free agency, particularly with Magic Johnson on the other side, making the sales pitch for LA.
Here, let me give you the reason, as I've said, I'm not optimistic PG stays. One reason I have for optimism, and frankly maybe the only reason, is I go back to the All-Star game. And Russell Westbrook in L.A. and the crowd's chanting for Paul George. I forgot what they saying, but basically saying, "Come home, Paul. We want you." Blah blah blah. And without prompting, this is not a media person asking Russell Westbrook about it. Westbrook turns to the crowd and says, "Forget about it. He's taken. It's not going to happen." That was a little bit out of character.
Possessive much?
That was a little bit out of character for Russell Westbrook or anybody else. To me, that gives me a little bit of optimism that maybe Russell does know something. That was outside of a media interaction. That wasn't a question and answer. That was just a spontaneous, hey, let me tell you what I know. So that's the reason for my small optimism. But Eric said it well, I think. Lakers are in his heart. We know that. He's admitted, his agent has admitted to that. Here's a fear I have. What's the chances that we're going through this again next July? Paul George signs, but he signs the 1-1, a 1-year contract plus a 1-year player option. We may be doing this again. You just talked about the Lakers scenario where they only get Kawhi Leonard, but then they'll have plenty of cap space.
If you're doing that again, you've given yourself the opportunity to do that again, which is all you can really ask for at this point with the Thunder.
Yeah, and I think the chances of that, if you're just asking the chances, are high. I mean, I think if he's with the Thunder, it's very likely on like a 1+1 deal. That's the thing I think you have to consider when you think about Paul George and Lakers exceptionalism and the Paul George love of the Lakers. He's not going to sign a lifetime contract in Oklahoma City. If he signs here, it's most likely going to be for the 1+1. That gives him a couple options. Go back into free agency next summer, opt in, stay 2 years here, and get to the 10-year number that matters in terms of the NBA, in terms of your max contract and some of the things you can do there. So he's got a couple of different options there. He could sign 5 years, $175, $176 million with the Thunder. That's highly unlikely. I think that's the least likely scenario in this situation, that he signs long-term with the Thunder. I do think that in all likelihood, if he signs with the Thunder, we're going to be here this time next year on some Thunder Thursday talking about this in the studio.
Is the talk, a few weeks ago, the talk that, hey, Paul George really is enticed by this security, the 5-year deal, the 175, the idea, the notion that I don't really have to worry about the long-term future if I sign this contract, and this is a guy whose leg's been busted into, so you can understand. You sort of think that notion is gone to the wind?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Paul George is far enough removed from that injury. I think that's less of a factor, and it's just not the trend for most guys to sign these long-term deals now. Even Kevin Durant, some of your bigger stars, they're signing year-to-year deals, or they're signing a year deal with an option. You have a few exceptions. You have guys that are eligible for the Supermax that do it, but even Kevin Durant, could have been eligible. I mean, he could have signed the Supermax, but he did that in order to fit Andre Iguodala in there and make sure that these other guys got paid so they can, run roughshod over the league for the next decade plus or whatever. Thanks, Kevin. But it's just a situation where, guys are signing more short-term contracts. Paul George is a guy who's probably going to do the same thing. He might even sign a short-term contract when he gets to L.A. because, LeBron's unpredictable. He might go to L.A. and sign a short-term deal. You don't know what he's going to do. He might skip town, just not skip town, but go to the Clippers the next year after that for all we know. So it's a league where guys are signing these short-term deals because the cap is always changing. It just gives them more financial flexibility. So if the Thunder could get Paul George back on a one-year deal, I think that would be a victory in itself. You give yourself an opportunity to maybe give them an extension next year like they did with Russell Westbrook.
The other thing is, these guys are smart. They're so business savvy. They're so smart about the way the cap moves. If you signed a long-term deal in 2015, you were pretty disappointed when 2016 came and those max deals got so much larger. There's probably not going to be a giant cap spike like that again because nobody likes what happened as a result. It created the Warriors. But we could see some significant jumps in the cap because the big thing that's hanging over the NBA right now is the uncertainty of the gambling money. What's that money going to look like when they start to make it? And the league will start to make it. It's a matter of how much, not when it's going to, not if it's going to happen, but when. And so guys who can sign long-term max contracts, they don't want to lock in anything before they get a better sense of what that max contract might look like a year from now or 2 years from now.
We've talked a lot about Paul George, not so much about another free agent, Jeremy Grant. He factors into all of this. Jeremy's not being courted by the Lakers for a max contract, but he's a valuable free agent. Thunder's maxed out on cap space, going to pay a heavy luxury tax. How does Jeremy Grant fit in the plans as it relates to Paul George?
It's tough because if Paul George comes back, you're going to have one of the most expensive teams of all time if you're keeping Carmelo Anthony and Jeremy Grant. I think Carmelo Anthony is directly tied to Paul George coming back and Jeremy Grant's future here. It seems like on the surface the easiest thing for the Thunder to do if Paul George comes back would be to stretch Carmelo Anthony's contract over 3 years. You basically be paying him an average of $9.3 million for the next 3 years, and Carmelo Anthony could go elsewhere and continue on with what he's doing. But that would be the easiest avenue to bring back Jeremy Grant because you'd essentially be paying him around what you'd be paying Carmelo Anthony, or you'd be paying less than you would be paying Carmelo Anthony to stick around, but you'd be paying him about in that range or lower of what you would stretch his contract over, the $9.3 million. Jeremy Grant's projected to make about $8.6 in that range, $8.6 million on the open market. Might make less because some of these teams with cap room might not want to just splurge and spend a bunch of money on a guy like Jeremy Grant when they can hold their money until next summer. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Thunder does with that. If they bring everybody back, the team's wildly expensive. They're paying, $150, $140 million in taxes. But Jeremy Grant's future is directly tied to what happens with Paul George as well.
Well, it's going to be interesting, and guys will know maybe by this time next Thursday. I mean, do you expect a long courtship of Paul George, or do you expect a quick decision?
I expect it's going to be relatively quick. The expectation is that LeBron James is going to move quickly, and LeBron is sort of the domino always when he's a free agent that frees up some other things to happen. The other thing, I kind of think Paul George has got this 3-part ESPN series. The first part aired on Tuesday. The second part airs on Thursday. The next part airs after he's made a decision. I bet that's not going to go a real long time.
They got to stay on schedule.
Yeah.
They're probably
want to be on early in the week next week. That's
well,
my
then
guess.
let's ask the question that's really on everybody. The real question. Any chance our 4th of July celebration gets affected either with massive disappointment or with mass hysteria?
No question it can get disappointed, or it could be jubilation across Oklahoma City. I would probably aim toward disappointment, but if you prepare yourself for such things, you can't be disappointed.
Let's say this. If Paul George is really the savvy PR animal we think he might be, he could do a lot worse than decide to come back to Oklahoma City and do it on July 4th.
And if he and Russell Westbrook's relationship is as good as we think it is, that might happen as well.
want to watch Westbrook's Twitter feed on July 4th if that's the case. Hey, stay tuned for further Thunder coverage here on News OK and every day in the Oklahoman.